Caroline, thank you very much for your time this morning. There's been a lot of reaction overnight since the announcement and since we all basically were asleep. What is the White House reaction to, as we just had those numbers up, global markets tumbling this morning and futures down sharply?
To anyone on Wall Street this morning, I would say trust in President Trump. This is a president who is doubling down on his proven economic formula from his first term. We saw wages increase. We saw inflation come down. We had a Trump energy boom. We had the largest tax cuts in history. And that's exactly what the president intends to do following his historic announcement yesterday for reciprocal tariffs. It's the golden age rule for the golden age of America. And the United States of America is no longer going to be cheated by foreign nations around the world. And as the president declared yesterday, this is indeed a national emergency. We have a $1.2 trillion trade deficit and counting. We've had 90,000 factories close in the last couple of decades. Since 1997, Americans have been put out of 5 million manufacturing jobs. These are not just statistics. These are real American lives that have been impacted. And it's about time we have a president who actually does something about it. This is going to restore more wealth, more jobs, more economic prosperity to our great country.
The foreign minister of Norway in Brussels for NATO meetings said this morning that the tariffs could violate an article of the NATO treaty that orders members to promote economic stability and collaboration. If this is a breach of the NATO treaty, will the president reassess his approach?
No, the president is firm in his approach, and the president is ensuring economic stability here in the United States of America. Yesterday, he was joined in the Rose Garden by everyday Americans, middle-class workers. You heard from one of them who the president invited on stage by name because he knows this man and he knows what the impact of globalization has done to communities like Detroit, Michigan, where auto workers have been put out of jobs, where we've seen factories shut down. We have offshored critical supply chains in our country. Do we want our critical supplies like life-saving medical medicines and chips being made in China, or do we want them being made right here in the United States of America? Every American knows the answer to that question. This is a common sense policy. And if these countries wanted to negotiate, if these countries wanted to do what's right, they've had 70 years to do it. Instead, they have been ripping off American workers. And President Trump has made it very clear that this is a policy he was going to implement. He campaigned on the idea of fair trade, on tariffs, and nearly 80 million Americans elected him to do it, and he is delivering.
You talk about the impact on everyday Americans. I wanted to ask you about that because the impact on farmers is a big concern I've heard voiced by many Republicans like Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina. I want to play for you what the senator has said and also what a local farmer in North Carolina is saying.
Anyone who says there may be a little bit of pain before we get things right need to talk about farmers who are one crop away from bankruptcy. They don't have time.
In Western North Carolina alone, Helene caused over $2.5 billion of crop losses. These tariffs are pouring salt in a wound that is just now beginning to heal.
To that farmer, the president says what?
The president is standing up for American farmers. In fact, he was joined here at the White House yesterday by many of them. We have seen China, the Chinese Communist Party, buying up, gobbling up American farmland. The president is doing what's right for these farmers, and to our fellow Americans, we encourage them to buy American. And you look at the effectiveness of the tariffs by the investments that have poured into our country thus far. Even before the president made this announcement yesterday, he has secured trillions of dollars in investments right here in the United States of America, and he has the backs of our farmers, our workers, and our in companies as well who are choosing to invest in the United States.
Well, I mean, that woman is a farmer, and that woman says that this feels like salt in a wound that is only beginning to heal. She does not seem to want these tariffs at all. I mean, the president has acknowledged that Americans could feel some pain with these tariffs, with this announcement. How much pain is the president comfortable with Americans feeling, even on a temporary basis?
Well, again, to that a wonderful American farmer, the president has your back and he wants to protect you and your family-owned farm. That is the point of these tariffs. As far as
are you going to do anything to ease the pain?
Well, absolutely. We're working on that every single day. The American people and the naysayers need to look at the whole of government economic approach that this administration is taking. The president has already launched a massive deregulatory agenda, which we know has saved the American taxpayer millions of dollars. He is also unleashing the might of our American energy industry, which we know is the greatest driver of inflation. It's one of the many reasons we had an inflation crisis in the previous administration. The president is unleashing American energy to bring down the cost of living in this country. We also know, again, in the president's first term, while he effectively implemented tariffs, wages went up. The median wage in America went up by $6,500. And so it is the goal of this president to have higher wages, less inflation, and tax cuts. That's the second step of the Trump economic agenda. More money back into the pockets of hardworking American. No taxes on tips, overtime, or Social Security. We're counting on Congress to get it done, and that's the next step of the Trump economic boom.
On taxes, JP Morgan just came out with an analysis in response to this tariff announcement, saying that these tariffs will be the largest tax hike on Americans since 1968, a tax hike by $660 billion a year. What is JP Morgan missing? What are world markets getting wrong? What are, when you see stock futures down, what is everyone missing, including that local farmer in North Carolina?
Well, they're missing the massive revenue that these tariffs are going to bring into the United States. Trillions and trillions of dollars in investment, which leads to more jobs in American communities, higher wages, more money in the pockets of hardworking Americans.
In the most immediate, I mean, these farmers, as Tom Silla says, farmers are one crop away from bankruptcy. That farmer doesn't have time to wait for tariffs to work their way into the system, for the benefit of it to work its way into the system at all. This is going to mean higher prices for Americans. In the most immediate, that's why I asked the question, how much pain on a temporary basis is okay? What's the standard that the president is looking at in terms of how much pain Americans can feel on a temporary basis that he's okay with?
Again, the president is focused every single day on lowering the cost of living in this country while simultaneously implementing these very effective tariffs. Massive deregulation, an energy boom, and tax cuts are the economic formula that will mean more prosperity and the lower cost of living. And it's a proven formula. Look at President Trump's first term and the results. When he left office, inflation was 1.4%. He implemented many tariffs in his first term that did bring in billions of dollars in revenue. In fact, the previous administration knew they were so effective, that's why they left them in place. So again, the president is delivering on his promise to implement reciprocal tariffs while his administration is working hard every day to cut regulation, to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse in our federal government as well. And tax cuts are the next step of this economic agenda, which will lead to more investment, more money in our economy, more economic growth.
One quick question, because I've heard it suggested. Is there any chance that the president will pull back on implementing these tariffs before they go into effect this weekend?
The president made it clear yesterday, this is not a negotiation. This is a national emergency. He's always willing to pick up the phone to answer calls, but he laid out the case yesterday for why we are doing this. And these countries around the world have had 70 years to do the right thing by the American people, and they have chosen not to. They have ripped off American workers. They have taken our jobs overseas. The president is putting an end to that yesterday.
Caroline Leavitt, White House Press Secretary, thank you for your time this morning.